Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining. And thank you, Kat and the International Slackline Association for having me. So I just wanted to start by, before I go into the presentation, I just wanted to say, what I'm hoping the objective of this lockdown series is. When Kat first approached me, she asked if I had any tips on social media that I could maybe share with the Slackline community. I understand that a lot of people here, we all have social media profiles, and some of us have small businesses and things on the side that we run our social media for. And sometimes it's, even though all of us are doing it, it can feel very overwhelming sometimes, and you don't know what the best way to do things are or what the rules are. And just before we started this talk, as people were joining, Kat was asking me questions like, how many words should I have? How much text should I have? And there's a lot of questions like this that we get quite a lot of the time. And so what I wanted to do was, before we even get into any of that nitty gritty stuff, I just wanted to take you guys through a super basic marketing content strategy. So the way, in my current job, I run the social media strategy for Universal Pictures. And so they're a movie distributor, and they do all the films like Fast and Furious, James Bond, like all those movies that are Universal Pictures. And when they release a movie, our team does a couple things. Like there's the offline team that runs the TV ads and the billboards. And basically, if you're in Australia and New Zealand and you see any poster or media for a film that Universal Pictures has released, that's my agency that's done it. But specifically, if you see something on your social media, if you see an ad or a post from them, and that's my team that's written the copy, written the caption, and we've come up with the strategy.
Thanks, Maika. I will feel more connected. Every time I see this, it's my friend.
I know. You guys should all follow their profile, by the way. But that's what we do. And so just the context of that is, when we're working on big accounts like that, and at my agency, we run social media for huge accounts. Sometimes we have access to a lot of tools and data that helps us draw insights and helps us to do our jobs. But it's sometimes hard with smaller agencies in your personal social media because you don't have access to these big tools. But there's a lot of really, really great stuff out there. Kat was telling me about using Canva to design some of the posters for the talk. And, my mom uses Canva as well. And once you start using it, it becomes really intuitive and you can do some lovely stuff. So, but before we get into any of that, I'm just going to run you through a basic guide of what's happening right now with COVID, what people are doing, and just the basic principles of how to write a super, super, super simple social strategy. I think once you understand this, or at least are exposed to it, it makes all this clutter make a little bit more sense. And then after that, I don't want to present to you. I really want this to be a forum where you can ask me questions. So after I go through that, I'd love to open the floor up to you guys. And if you have a personal, business, or even if it's just your own social media, I'd love for you to think of a question that you might maybe be struggling with, or just something you're curious about, and we can discuss. So if that's okay, I'm going to present now. Cool. So today's talk is about social media, and specifically during this time when we're going through a time of social distancing, what does that mean for us, right? We're experiencing a time where we're super active on social media, and yet we're socially very distant. And I thought this was an interesting point that I wanted to talk about. So, this is us at the moment. We're just, sitting at home, on our laptops, on our phones, depending on which country you're in. Some people are not allowed to go out. The lockdown laws in certain countries are really strict. And what you're doing is you're spending a lot of time on social media. What are people looking for? Well, in Australia, this is from Google Trends data. How to make hot cross buns was up 500% in the last day. So people are looking to make, special treats. Who is eligible for free childcare was up 5,000%. This is the kind of things that are on people's minds. And globally, a buzz cut, people searching for the word buzz cut, reached an all-time high, because I'm sure you've seen this on social media. People are taking their housemates and their family to help cut their hair because the hair salons are closed, except in Australia where the hair salons are open. And this is a slide, one of the tools that we use in our company. You get data from like all these different sources. I just want to share this with you guys because consumers are more active on social media as a result of social distancing. And these figures are from the US, and you can see like the dark pink and the dark blue, they're doing more, like 70% more. Women are on social media 70% more, men are on social media 71% more. And you can see this split by the demographic, by the age groups. And so the biggest age group that's on social media is 35 to 44, but also like basically from the age of 18 to 44, they're engaging more. And even with the older audience, it's about the same. But it's really the younger kids that are like super on media all the time because that's what they're doing. You don't really have much else to do, right? And it's really interesting to see during this time what brands are doing, because while some brands are voicing their thoughts during this time, like you've got Lush Cosmetics that says, in this moment, there's no business as usual. I mean, that's a pretty bold statement to make. And Lush Cosmetics is a beauty company. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Time Out changed their social media profile picture. Instead of saying time out, they said time in, which was really nice, encouraging people to stay inside. Nike did this post saying, if you've ever dreamed of playing for millions around the world, now is your chance. Play inside and play for the world. So they're encouraging people again to stay inside. And PlayStation did the same thing. Be MasterChef, be Diaz, be Ori, be whoever you want to be a hero, stay at home. So these are brands that are literally changing their business proposition to align with what's happening in the world. But on the other hand, you've got brands that are kind of making fun of it and are being a little bit more lighthearted and have a sense of humor. And so Ellen DeGeneres says, I already ate all my quarantine snacks, which is probably me as well. This was an Australian example. Everyone's stockpiling pasta, and this dairy farm says, wondering what to do with all that pasta, and they started putting out recipes for what to make with it. This was something from America where they said CVS it's a convenience store there. They said those CVS receipts are finally paying off, and making a joke about the toilet paper shortage. And I like this one a lot. Bath and Body Works says, what song are you singing while you wash your hands, as they try to promote their product, which is obviously very relevant for this time. And, I think what's cool about social media is that you really get a sense of how consumers are feeling based on what's happening, right? And this is available to all of us. But just by this, you can see how different brands are aligning, what their thoughts are, how they're portraying themselves on social media. It's a really interesting way to kind of take a pulse on what's happening in the world. But for us, for Slackliners, this was a photo that my friend took actually at a highlining festival. The question is like, where should you play? Like this is what all the big brands are doing. Cool. But what does it mean for you? Whether that's your personal brand or whether that's your small business, like what does it mean? How should you approach this? And the way that I start, as I was putting this together, I was like, okay, I normally do strategies for like all these big companies, and it's very anonymous, right? Because they're a brand and that brand is all encompassing. But I very rarely do strategies for smaller businesses or people. But I think what I realized as I was trying to put these thoughts together is that it's really the same principles. And so I don't know if any of you guys have seen this talk by Simon Sinek, but he's an amazing guy, and he talks about like starting with why. Like every business, it's really cool if you guys get the chance to watch it on your own time. It's a beautiful TED talk, and it really talks about everything starting with this question, why, right? And like, it could be maybe you want to entertain. Like maybe you're like, what? I want to show cool little funny moments and on my social media, and my why is because I want to be an entertainer. Or maybe it's because you want to educate. Kat, like you're doing this lockdown series. Maybe your purpose is, what? I want this to be a channel where people learn and connect and better themselves. Or maybe you want to elevate. So that's Dean Porter's dog that he took base jumping. And maybe you're like, what? I want this to be a platform that truly inspires people and takes them to the next level. This is what I want to be doing with my social media. And these are pretty like broad goals, right? But it comes down to like anything that you do and put out into the world you should have somewhat of a reason. It doesn't have to be a higher purpose. Maybe you're just like, what? My abs look really good in this photo and I want to show it off. That's your why. That's okay. It can be your why, but you should think about that why before you think about what you're posting. The second most important thing is you've got to find your audience, right? Because like at the end of the day, social media is about reaching an audience. That's why you're posting. Otherwise, you'd just be showing your friends a picture of it or messaging your friends. Like, why are you posting it on social media? And who is it that you want to share this with? The most important thing is understanding that. Like, who is your audience? What is your audience doing? What are they consuming? What do they like? Because really your goal is you want to connect with them, right? Like that's why you're on here on social media. I think that's why we're all on social media, is because we want to connect with each other and we want our content to connect with people that we either know or we don't know, depending on what your goals are. For me, personally, I actually kind of went off social media a while back. Just it's really funny. I'm in this position at work where I'm doing it for a living, and like in my personal life, I really hate social media. But I had this like moment when I was living in South Africa, and I was like just having such an incredible time and experience with my friends that I wanted to truly be in the moment, and I didn't want to connect on social media. This year, I'm realizing that it's actually a wonderful way to stay in touch with people, and especially my family lives all over the world and friends that I haven't seen. So I'm kind of getting back into social media, and my why is when I post something, it's with the purpose of connecting with family and friends that maybe haven't seen me and want to know how my life is going. That's my why. For the Slacklining community, your why could be, you know what, we want to reach and connect a whole bunch of people together, and we want to do that through social media. But that seems to be the goal. I think that's the goal, is to really drive that connection. So if you were in a advertising agency, the first thing that happens is you start with a creative brief, right? You know how I talked about starting with your why, starting with your audience. The first thing that you would do in a creative agency is you start with a brief. And what that is you get someone, which is your target, so this is your audience, what are they thinking, feeling, doing, to think, feel, do something else, because you want to change their behavior, you want to like make an impact. And you do this by your brand proposition. And this is a little bit like, it can seem kind of abstract. So I thought, okay, let's use an example from the community. So for this brief, when Kat asked me to speak, she wanted to get the international Slackline community, thank you for joining, who are in lockdown and can't Slackline together anymore, right? To feel connected and inspired by delivering an online lockdown series open to the community and beyond. Was this your purpose, Kat?
I don't think we had the words to describe that, but this looks like you've summarized it nicely, yeah.
Yeah, and that's really why this lockdown series started, right? Is because that's sort of what your purpose was. And I think it's exactly that. A lot of times people are doing things and you're already doing this. It's just you don't have the words to like nicely like summarize it. But sometimes like this is the most basic framework. If you ever have, you know, a post or a problem or an objective and you're really confused about what to do, just stop for a second and be like, okay, I want to get who's my audience, who is doing what do I want them to do because of this, and how am I going to do that? It's the most simple thing that you can follow for a creative brief. But then once you figure that out and you're like, okay, so I've got an audience, I want to get them to do this, I want to like post about, you know, for this instance, I want to post about the lockdown series. You then think, it's a long and winding road. You know, I think we're all in this together where there's so much content out there. There's so much going on, and it kind of gets overwhelming. You're like, okay, cool, I've got my objective, and now how do I do that, right? And so this is another super simple framework. It's just something that Google uses all the time, actually. It's called a hero, hub, and hygiene model. And I know these are all like buzzwords. Instead of hygiene, sometimes they say help. And the way that they define this is that like your hero ads are like the, you know, big TV commercial, or for a small business, it could be like that one awesome video that you spend like 2 months doing, that you know, really put your heart and soul in, and it's talking about who you are and what you're doing. And it's really your hero campaign. Whereas your hub is more like, say, the lockdown series, right? The posts that you're doing about a certain thing, a certain like idea, something that you do once in a while, but it's not your entire like brand. And then hygiene can be something that's like an everyday thing, like something silly, something that you're just posting to keep people entertained, your Instagram stories, like things that you're just happening a little bit more regularly. But I thought the best way to explain this is to use an example. And so my favorite is Nike. We're all athletes here, and I think it makes sense when you look at something that a big brand is doing. And so if you look at this model, right, like remember, hero is the really like big ideas. Hub goes a little bit further, and hygiene is like their everyday stuff. And so if you look at their social media, if you look at Nike's social media, oops, you've got the hygiene content. I pulled out just a few posts from their Instagram. And if you look at these two posts, one's a picture of a surfer and one's a picture of someone doing like push-ups on a bench. And the captions say, why walk on water when you can fly? Hashtag ask what if. And the other one says, kick your feet up, stay a while, hashtag better for it. And you can see like in these posts, what they're doing is like they're posting something they're super beautiful pictures. It's a really like nice caption, kind of gets people excited. They're thinking about their target audience, which is all athletes and, you know, trying to inspire people. And they're using some of their brand slogans and brand beliefs. But it's just kind of like everyday content. It's nothing like super inspirational or anything like that. Whereas if you go to the Hub, which is like one layer beyond that, you're looking at some of their athletes, because that's the Nike's brand ambassadors and people that really live and breathe their message. And then you're looking at posts like, it's Simone's intense focused energy and relentless drive that have made her the best ever to ever do it. Hashtag just do it. And then they're talking about your dream starts as a kid. You get older and your aspirations grow because you believe you can do it. Hashtag just do it. And so you see how this is a little bit more about their campaign, like a just do it campaign, and they're bringing that to life. Whereas what's the hero? What's the hero campaign? The hero campaign is something like this, where they, you know, the first example that I showed you guys during COVID, it's like, if you ever dreamed of playing for millions around the world, now is your chance. And then they launched this beautiful commercial. If you later on, you should look at the video on their Instagram, and it's this like black and white, awesome like video that's like so inspirational. And it's talking about to those that play in their living rooms, to those that play in their kitchens, and really like building it up about like this now is the time when we are playing together, but we'll keep moving forward, all 7.8 billion of us. Hashtag play for the world. And that's like a big hero idea, right? They're not going to do that all the time. They're just going to do one. Remember the circle model, like one little hero campaign, then a hub, then a hygiene. And I know this example is a big brand, but really the concept applies to anything. Like if you think about it, if you think about the Slackline Association, it's like maybe your hero campaign is that one beautiful video that you do that shows like all the wonderful footage that you've edited together and talking about the international Slackline community. And then your hub is more about the little things that you're doing. And then maybe your hygiene content is like, you know, the memes that you post or the stories that you post, things that happen every day that aren't, you know, going to win awards or change lives, but it's something that you do for the community. And so just bringing it back to like, you know, what to do and how to get there. I think the most important thing, as you guys know, with slacklining, like the first step is to get the footwork right? Like that's where you start. And I just want to summarize what I spoke about, which is a couple of things. Like, first of all, you really have to understand your audience. So, for example, like when I was putting these slides together, I'm using imagery from slacklines and outdoors, and I'm doing all of that because this is the audience that I'm presenting to. And similarly, when you're posting on social media, you have to understand first and foremost, like if you remember the get, who do I want to get? What do I want them to do? How am I going to do this? It all focuses on the audience. Like, who do you want to target? Who do you want to reach? And there's some awesome tools free tools that help you do this. There's like Facebook Audience Insights, and there's Think with Google. And the first way to understand your audience, if you don't know them, if you're a small business and you're marketing to strangers, you know, you might not know who these people are. Like maybe you're a slackliner, but maybe you have a small business aimed at footballers and you're not a footballer. So how do you know what they're thinking? How do you know what they like? So you can use tools, there's free tools out there to kind of understand whoever it is that your audience is. Like maybe you have a diaper company, right? I don't know, perhaps you do. And your target is moms with kids. And you could be like a 45-year-old man with this company. How do you know what a mom with a kid feels like and what she does? You don't. But the good news is we live in a world where you have access to this information. There's tools out there to help you find that. The second thing that you do after this, like once you understand your audience, you plan your content, right? And there's a lot of really cool tools out there. Again, like, I'm sorry, the tools that I use in my company are really expensive. So I tried to find like cheap, like tools that smaller businesses and personal like accounts could use. And so there's things like Planoly. I don't know if you've, some of you've probably seen and heard of this one. There's Later, which helps you schedule and post Instagram posts later. There's Contently, which I haven't used, but looks really cool. It's like a calendar. You can use that. And there's even simple as Google Sheets. Like you just create a Google Sheet, and it doesn't have to be anything complicated. It's just once you understand what you're doing and once you understand your audience, the best thing you can do is be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to make a monthly calendar and I'm going to think about what do I want to post? Like, let me plan it out. And if none of these tools work for you, the best thing you can do, like the best bit of advice I can give you, is to look at the site called Product Hunt. Product Hunt is a site where they post about all this new technology and people upvote it. And a lot of these tools actually got successful because people boosted their posts on Product Hunt. Loads of people tried it and then they got really, famous because of it. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're like, you know what, I would really love a tool that does something like blah, go onto Product Hunt and search for it. Chances are there probably is a tool that does that. So once you've done that, once you've understood your audience, once you've decided what you want to post, then what do you do? Then it's about fun. It's about playing with the creative, the copy, the social formats. And I think a lot of us are doing this anyways. Like, I'm always asking my friends like, oh, like, what do you like better? What should I say? And I think a lot of people are doing this with their social media. It's as simple as saying, which picture do you like better, right? And if you look at the example of today, Kat actually did this herself. When she approached me, she said, Micah, like, I want you to do this thing, but we need a picture on Instagram. What should we do? And so I was like, okay, Kat, like maybe one of these 4 images. I was like, it's about COVID. I looked on this website called Unsplash, which a lot of these photos are from, and from Kat's Facebook account. But I tried to find images that I thought would be very, visually appealing. And so I sent her these, and then I said, oh, you know what, let me just, I like badly sketched it. I was like, what if we have something like this, like socially distant, socially savvy? And Kat took this, like this, in my case, like I was giving her material and then she's going to play with the creative copy and format. She said, okay, how about this? And so she took one of the images. I think she used Canva in this case. She like put some text over it. And then you know what she decided? She said, no, I don't like that. So she flipped it. She flipped it upside down. She's like, yeah, that's better. I'm going to lighten it. I'm going to flip it. And then she was like, okay, well, now that I've got that, what do I need to do, right? Like, she's like, okay, I've played with the text, I've played with the copy, now what do I need to do? She's like, well, I want to post it on Facebook, and I want to post it on Instagram. And I'm kind of like between these 2 platforms, because what did she want to do? She wanted to reach you guys, right? Like the people on this call, she wanted to reach her audience on these 2 platforms. And so she had the creative and the copy, but she had 2 different platforms that she wanted to use. So on Facebook, she used that image that she'd done in Canva. She'd done the copy, everything, like the picture with this series. And then on Instagram, she was like, you know what, I want to try something a little bit different. And so she stalked my Instagram and put a cute little, that was actually a diving manual, and she changed it with like social media icons. And you can see she's even used a different emoji here. She's used a rainbow emoji for Instagram and a house emoji for Facebook. And this is awesome. Like, Kat hasn't studied social media, I don't think, and people don't study this stuff, but it's really intuitive, and you guys are doing this stuff already. It's just about like, once you understand what you're doing and once you're able to put structure to it, you can start to be more thoughtful and more planned about it. But it's not rocket science. It's about playing around with it and having fun and understanding why you're doing it, who you're doing it for, and what you're hoping to achieve. And so some of the tools that I spoke about, because I know that, like a lot of us are time poor and we want to do these cool things, but we might not have access to the resources. So some of the tools that are out there, Canva is great for mocking up these images like Kat mocked up in the post. There's Splice. You had to pay for this, but I bought it when it was free, but it's an awesome video editing app. I really love it. There's Unfold, which creates these beautiful like stories. They look so professional. They're so wonderful. And then there's just something as simple as Facebook has this creator studio where you can go in and they've got their own tools to help you create for Facebook and Instagram. But if you want something else and you haven't seen it here and you're like, man, I wish there was something that did this, you know what you should do? Go to Product Hunt. It's amazing. You can find what you're looking for. There surely is like a solution or something out there that does that. And so once you've done all this stuff, you're like, okay, so I know what I want to do. I know who I want to reach. I've played around. I've posted this content. And now what? Well, if you're a small business, or even if you're just someone who wants to make sure that you're doing the best that you can and you really want to grow and you want to understand what you're doing so you can do it better, then what you need to do is you need to measure what you're doing, because you can't optimize what you don't measure. So measurement is really important. And in some of the bigger media agencies, like honestly, half my job is measuring the content that we've posted to see what worked and to see what didn't work so that we can post better content or so that we can come up with a better strategy. Because if you don't know what's working and what's not working, then you can't understand your audience and you can't understand how to optimize it. So before we started this video chat, Kat asked questions like, well, should I post like, a lot of copy? What's too much copy? What's too much text? And the answer is like, there isn't, I don't know, like there isn't a hard and fast answer. It just depends on who your audience is, what they like reacting to, what's working for them. A post that I did on the Slackline community wouldn't work in the, I don't know, bush bashing community or in the football community. It's all a different audience. And you might have, for instance, in the mums group with like young kids, they might like posts that are super long and really emotional. But in the dad's post with like, beers and footy, they probably don't want to hear about like all your feelings and emojis. I know I'm stereotyping, but a lot of advertising is about stereotyping, unfortunately. But you just have to understand what works for your community, what doesn't. And so again, with Facebook, a good way to measure this is with Facebook Insights. Like there's a lot of tools, again, that you can, once you get to a higher level, like you can start to pay for better insights and stuff that collates the data better. But while you're small, you don't want to spend your money on that. So just look at your audience insights. There's so much that you can do. There's so many free tutorials out there. You can download some of this data and really get into the nitty gritty of like, who's your audience? What time are they online? Like, what are they doing? And it's the same for Instagram as well. You have Instagram Insights. And this, again, if you've got an Instagram business profile, will go into things like how many times your content was shown on the screen. That's an impression. How many times it reached a person. That's called reach. How many times it was clicked on. How many times it was viewed. Like you can get into so much detail. And it's not about getting obsessed with the numbers and getting lost in the detail, because then you miss out on the bigger picture. But it is about understanding things that you can hack it in a certain way. And if you're like, you know what, my audience is online between 7 to 9 p.m., then don't post at 4 a.m. No one's going to see it. So these tools are really powerful once you understand what you're doing and once you learn from that. So in summary, before I open it up to the floor, in summary, learning to Slackline is much harder than learning to social media from my perspective. Like, I honestly think that social media is very intuitive. Everyone's doing it already. And once you have these like basic principles, it's not that hard. Slacklining, on the other hand, man, it's like so difficult. So hopefully I'll be able to slackline someday. But, firstly, get your footing right. Like, figure out your footwork. That's your super basics. Like, get that down. Learn some basic movements. Once you know what your footwork is, learn some basic movements. Then you can get creative and you can play. And most of all, like, have fun. Like, have fun creating something beautiful that connects to your community. Do we have any questions? That's our friend Art. He just looks so great. Like, he was such a good person to like have that question bubble popping out from.
I have first question. So one thing I guess I don't understand is, what is reach and versus an impression? Like, is reach when, like, impression is when it's shown on somebody's screen. Yeah. But isn't that reach already?
No. So, okay. So for example, imagine that I had a pair of sunglasses, right? I have this product that I am like, Kat, I've got a pair of sunglasses. And then I see you a day later and I'm like, hey, Kat, I've got like a pair of sunglasses. Do you want these? And you're like, Micah, go away. And I'm like, okay. And then I come back a week later and I'm like, Kat, these sunglasses, don't you want these sunglasses? And essentially, like, if you imagine that I am the Facebook or Instagram or whatever, I have reached one person. Like, I've only reached Kat. That's one reach. But I've shown her the sunglasses 3 times.
Oh, okay,
And
okay, okay.
so impressions is the number of times your content was served onto a screen or a device or whatever. And reach is the unique number of people that it reached. So it could, and sometimes these numbers are really different, right? Like sometimes you could reach 800 people, but you might have 10,000 impressions, which means that each person was served this content multiple times. And the concept that ties to this is also frequency, because once you start getting into paid advertising, you can actually put a frequency cap on stuff. So like those sponsored ads that you get on Facebook and Instagram, you've got on the back end, you've got a media agency that's like, okay, we believe the optimal frequency to show Kat the sunglasses is 4 times. We think that if we show her the sunglasses on the 4th time, she's going to buy it. And so they'll actually set the frequency to be 4 times per person. Or on the flip side, they can be like, you know what? We're only going to show her the sunglasses 1 time, because after that, any more times we show it to her, she'll get buyer's fatigue and won't buy them. And it's different
Buyer's
depending on the
fatigue.
product. Yeah.
Wow. How, I mean, let's, I guess maybe just a quick one, because how much, being on the other side, being somebody who's making content and can see like how much influence do the social media companies admit to? Like they can tell when I will buy something, or they can tell
Mm,
how much information do you feel you're getting? Do you feel like you really can understand like little things like that, even behavior?
yeah, look, I think I think that our entire industry works on data and on targeting people, right? And so it's all the information that you put into social media, or not even social media, honestly, like all the information you have like on your phone, right? If you've got a phone and you've got apps connected to it, even if you're not logged on to social media, but you've logged in 1 time, you have all that information that they're not targeting Kat Horton, but they're targeting people like Kat Horton. So they work on the principle that people like you are similar. So if you're, a woman in her like early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, they'll start to make assumptions like this might be, and again, marketing works on stereotypes, right? Like they'll start to make assumptions like, okay, like this woman is starting to get into her childbearing years based on the kind of, no, yeah, but like based on the kind of content and based on the kind of life stages, she's probably going to want to have kids or buy a house, but then they start to look at the things that you do, because then they'll be like, okay, this woman is interacting a lot with sporting equipment, so maybe she's more sporty, so maybe she doesn't want to have kids. Like, like they start to make all these assumptions, but it's not people that are making these assumptions, it's machines. So it's all big data, and like they're compiling this information in a hashed anonymous way. And when we get marketing briefs, our briefs are telling us like, say it's a Slackline company and they want to sell Slacklines. They're going to be like, we want to reach the people that are most likely to buy them. And so therefore, those people are going to probably be between the ages of 20 to 35. I don't know, just a wild guess. They're going to be more male than female. Like, I don't know, they'll have like certain criteria. And then based on the information that you have on social media, you can target those people, or you can find people like those people. And it's all about making the best guess. And so that's why sometimes when you see ads that are like, oh, that's very much like, I was just talking about that, I was just doing that. It's because, yeah, they're looking at like your search patterns, and they're
They
looking
just
at,
know you so well.
yeah, it's getting better and better. So I think it's definitely getting better and better. I think consumers think that marketing agencies know absolutely everything. No, like they don't, because they're just not, the systems aren't connected well enough yet. But in the future, it'll probably get better and better. So yeah, like anything that you do on social media, like, I mean, you have to weigh it up on a personal level, right? Like, is it worth the convenience of getting those services to give up your personal data? And that's like it's a personal choice. For me, because I work in the industry, I'm a bit more conscious of this stuff. So if I am searching for something like that I don't want people to know that I'm searching for, I always open up a private browser. But you can also make it work in your favor, you know, like say I really want to buy a pair of sunglasses and I put it into my shopping cart and then I don't buy them. You'll start to get ads, depending on what the company's strategy is. You'll start to get ads that are now like 10% off sunglasses, like because you haven't bought it and they're trying to look for you to buy it. So there's like, you can also manipulate the system, you know, it works both ways.
Thank you. This was cool. Sorry if I let it in a slightly dark way.
No,
Naveen's asking a question. You can, guys, if you have a try to think of a question and then unmute yourself and then ask it, please.
Yeah, I had a question.
Yes.
Yeah, great presentation. What were the 3 terms again? There was Heart, Hub, and the 3 terms.
So that was it was Hero, Hub, and Hygiene. That's just one of the frameworks. I thought it was the nicest, easiest to understand, but like,
yeah,
you know.
Okay, so for the Hub content,
yes.
How do you suggest building goals and creating content for the Hub? So I understand the Hygiene is regular daily stuff, the Hero is big content, and the Hub, how do you set goals for that?
So that's a good question. So I think before you even get to this part, like I would ask, so I'm reading your question now. Can I read out your question to the group? You said, Nevin says, I have a Slackline page where I highlight original content and sell my own gear of slacklining from India and around the world. My biggest question is, how do I avoid numbing people with similar content? Because 90% of Slackline highline photos do look the same. I like mixing it up with memes too. Curious to know your thought on this. So yeah, look, that's like a perfect example where, so you have this very specific goal, right? So you're selling slacklining equipment. Is that correct? Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, what was it that you asked?
I said, so your goal for this page is that you want to sell slacklining gear. Is that correct?
I want people to get into slacklining and highlining, and eventually they would purchase my gear. So it's both at the same time, perhaps. I do have an organic intent towards it. So and of course I would like that to reflect in the content. It's to inspire people, and yes, eventually they buy gear as well if they're inspired.
Right. So I guess, like, you know, I didn't talk about this in the talk, but what you're essentially doing, and your social media will be a lot more business focused because you've got a business goal. And so for your business, like, it's a funnel. If you think of it as a funnel, like, you get people, there's a few different marketing terms that we use. There's awareness. So that's when you're capturing people's, like, literally making them aware of something. Like, say, you know, someone who's never heard of this before, they see a beautiful image, they see, like, what you're talking about, those, like, beautiful pictures of people slacklining and something like that. And they're like, wow, what is this? And they become curious. And so that's just building awareness. And the goal of awareness is to reach the widest possible audience, just to make them aware that you exist. The next phase in that is consideration. So you've got someone who's aware, maybe they've, like, followed your page and they're like, oh, this is kind of curious, like, I want to see what happens. They are now following you, and you have consideration where they start to see more content and they're like, you know what, like, maybe I want to do this. Maybe I want to highline or slackline, perhaps. I don't know, haven't decided yet. That's like consideration. And then the third stage of that is intent. So this can be an intent to purchase, which is obviously for your business, that's the goal, where someone's looked at your content, they've engaged with it, they've maybe even tried it out, and they're like, wow, this is so cool. I want my own slackline. Like, I'm not just, you know, in that stage anymore where I am curious about it. I actually want to buy it. And then you've got your content that serves those people, because those people, their intention is to purchase. And so I think with your Hero, Hub, and Hygiene, like, your Hygiene, all this is, it's like a different way of classifying the content. But essentially, you've also got to think that your content's going to serve different people at different times. And so some of your content, which is the beautiful images and like those aspirational stuff, that's about raising awareness about the sport and about the community. But then maybe the tutorial content is more about the consideration, like some of the stuff where you're like learning how to slackline. That's about getting people to consider this as a sport or as a community. And then your intent to purchase can be like literally like a carousel post on Instagram where you've got the products and you're like ready to buy your first slackline, and you can then literally link them to the product. Now, if you do this with paid advertising, you can literally target people who have seen your first ad, and you're like, these people have seen it, they spent a lot of time on it, and then you can serve them another ad that's more specific. And if they spend time on that, you can serve them another ad that like links them to the product. When you get into the world of paid advertising, it gets like super granular, and you can do a lot of stuff with that. If you're not putting any money behind it and it's just organic, then you don't have the tools to do it so precisely. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. You still use like, you can still use your planning. You can to plan, like, even just for yourself, come up with like a schedule, be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to have these types of content. Maybe every Saturday, I'm going to have Slackline Saturday where I share a tip. And that can be, you know, one of your hub ideas, one of your campaign ideas. Maybe the hygiene content is more just to engage with your community and ask them how they're going and how to share some of their videos and their setups, and then you can use that content later. There's no rules. There's just principles. Does that help?
No, that helps a lot. I think if I just keep in mind the awareness, consideration, and intent, and I just categorize at least vaguely that something should come under one of these categories, I think I'll be on my way. So yeah, that was very helpful.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is really like to think about, it all comes back to that question around why. Like, why are you posting this? Are you posting it to get people excited about the sport, or are you posting it to get them to buy it? Because depending on who you're trying to target, right? Because those are different audiences. Someone who wants to buy a slackline is in a different journey, in a different stage of the journey than someone who doesn't know about the sport. But you're trying to capture both of their attention. So you have to go back to like thinking about the why and thinking about the audience and being like, okay, this is why I'm doing it for this post. This is who I'm trying to do it to, and this is how I'm going to get there. And if you just simplify it, it starts to make a lot more. It's about making sense for yourself so that you can start to do it more consistently and build patterns and grow your audience and eventually get business results.
Right. Thank you, Malavika.
Yeah, no worries. Anyone?
I have another one. Somebody else is welcome to. How do you basically do this the strategy for every kind of direction or every stage? So for example, for Naveen, he wants to get people involved, and he wants to eventually sell gear as well. So do you have to have like your hero, like this main big things for both of those ideas, or is it something that's very overarching?
Look, like the way that you do this, so the way that it works in my agency or in advertising agencies is normally, say Nike, we use that example, right? Like say Nike's launched a new sneaker. They'll come to our agency just for this one sneaker, and they'll be like, you know, here's the brief, here's the marketing brief. We want to just sell this one shoe, and this is the audience that we want to sell it to. How should we do it? And so based on that one brief, we'll come up with the strategy for that, and we'll come up with a framework. It depends on what they're trying to do, right? And I think for smaller businesses, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like the Hero, Hub, and Hygiene is just more a sense of like understanding like how you can think of your own content. I think what's more important for a small business is the planning stage. Is like being like, okay, let me put stuff into a calendar. Let me figure out ways to use my time more efficiently. Let me figure out tools that help me schedule posts, or, you know, ways that I can reach my audience like more consistently and use the data to measure. Like when I measure this stuff, let me find those insights that if I see that everyone's switching online at like 6 p.m., let me start to post at 6 p.m. to have more people see it. I think that's more important for a small business rather than worrying about like, you know, the reason I wanted to show you the Hub, Hero, and Hygiene stuff is because eventually when you get there, you can be like, okay, this is how to classify my content. But little steps, like baby steps, like figure out what it is you want to do, figure out why you want to do it, and then it's about planning to get there.
Anybody else has questions? Otherwise, I have another one. But yeah, I don't have to speak the whole time. Oh, Micah, could you please show your face?
I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I have another question. So how do we now reach, the French community that don't usually interact with us and they won't even show up for our insight, like what time they're online? How do you branch out?
So I think the first thing that you can do is if you go into Facebook Insights. Have you ever used this tool, Facebook Audience Insights?
I glanced at it.
The way, because look, there's your organic audience, which is the people that already like your page. Those are the people that when you post content to and you don't put money behind it, those are the people that you're reaching without putting money behind it, right? And so to know the makeup of that audience, you go into Facebook Audience Insights and it tells you how many of those people are, I don't know if it does it they do it by country, I think. So you can see like what percentage of your followers are from Australia versus what percentage are from France or whatever, depending on how people have put that information into their profile. And so maybe I would say the first step to do is you go into your page, into your Facebook Audience Insights, and you look at how many French people you even have following your page. Because if you've only got like 10 French people, then sure, you can like set your geographical targeting, even from an organic point of view, you can set it to like French countries, people from France. But it's not going to be a good use of your platform, right? But if you really feel like if you want to reach like more French people, that's when you put like paid advertising behind it. So you can then, if you have a sponsored post or a paid post, you can tell Facebook, I want to reach like French people in Australia, or I want to reach French people in France. Like this is your world, you're slacklining your page. If you put money behind it, it goes to like the wider world. You're basically paying to get your content to other people that are not following your page. And by paying to do that, you then are opening up the opportunity for those people to like your page and follow your page. And you don't have to put much behind it. You could just put like, I don't know, like $10 behind it and see how it goes. Like it's a good learning.
Yeah. Oh, Facebook's taking care of that. You can do shit for free. But okay, $10 doesn't sound like that much.
I mean, it depends. Like we've got clients that spend like millions of dollars, right? It just depends on like how many people you want to reach. Because the more money you spend, and then you start to go into, you're asking me about reach, but then you start to go into metrics like CPM, which is cost per milli. Milli means thousand, I think. So it's like cost per 1,000 people reached. So it'll tell you per 1,000 people, this is how much money you've spent. And they'll tell you things like your view through rate, like how much of if it's a video, like how much of the video is being watched, like to what percentage. Because then you can start to be like, oh, like I thought this video was really good, but really everyone's dropping off at, number 10, second number 10. What's going on? Like, why is it not more exciting? Sometimes these metrics are really depressing though, because you look at these metrics and you're like, wow, people have zero attention spans. Like what?
That we deal with, it's about having fun, and this is my first experience ever doing anything like this, and it is fun. You're like, oh, it's like this picture, and you like play around with it. Like I enjoy it, but then I realize I'm like, oh my god, this really doesn't work. Like this is doing this was a bad picture. I made it terrible, and you have to just like kill your little creative children. How do you find? Is it something that you just numb down and you're like, data says what's best, or is there some way to shape what people like?
It's really tough because when I was doing that Unswag Beanie page, like you start to see like even if you've got really good content, sometimes people just don't see it because unfortunately Facebook is a pay to play platform. You pay money and you get your content shown. Like they're deprioritizing. It's really hard to build an audience from scratch. It's really hard. But the way that it works is the more you do it, the more people see your content, the more people like and interact with your content, then Facebook's algorithm is like, oh, this person likes the content, so we'll serve more of it. So it's like in some influencer communities, for instance, someone will post a piece of content and then they'll message all their friends being like this post now in the first 5 minutes, and like all their friends like it, and then they've got like a boost in the algorithm. Like there's robots in Russia, like there's heaps of stuff that's going on, just like dodgy stuff to like trick the algorithm into thinking the content's more popular so that it gets posted more, shared more. The best way to do it quickly is to put a little bit of money behind it. Unfortunately, if you're trying to build a business, like gone are the days where you can just do it without spend. The best way to do it is to do it like have really good content, figure that out, like measure, all this stuff is about measurement, which is why our clients pay us like money to do all this measurement for them, because if you don't measure stuff, then you can't know what's working and what's not working. And sometimes your hunch on, oh, I think this picture was really good, but it didn't work, we don't have any numbers to back that up. It could be so many things. It could be because like you posted it at 7 p.m. and your audience is online at 9 p.m., things like that. But you have to start to look at patterns, and then, yeah, you have to not take it too personally, because the masses are asses, Like you might have a really good post, but maybe nobody appreciates it. That's their fault.
It has this tortured artist element to it. Oh, am I shit? Oh, is the world shit? What?
Yeah.
I'm glad there's a technical term for that.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks for this great talk, Malavika.
No worries.
So my question is about social media management softwares. I think you mentioned one of them in your talk. Just
yes.
Quickly recap. We have been using a couple different softwares. We tried, I think it's called HootSuite, something like that.
Yeah, I use that one.
And some other ones as well, but we kind of didn't manage to, work with those on a regular basis. They're not so cheap. And by now there's also Creator Studio and things going on within Instagram and Facebook platforms. So I was wondering, like, is there something you can recommend at this stage that we could start using? Could even be paid, but maybe not as expensive as HootSuite. I mean, we have the NPO version of it.
Yeah.
So that's usable, but just, do you recommend the software, or would you just stick with what Facebook and Instagram have to offer and work with that, like the business platforms?
So I guess like we use HootSuite. It depends on what you're trying to do, right? Because HootSuite it does a couple things. Like it's a CMS system, like a content management solution. And what people use it for is like, we're using it in a really interesting way, because we're actually not using the content management system. We're just using it for reporting. So we're just paying for their product, which is called HootSuite Impact. And we use that to report on what we're doing, because you can customize the data really well. But I guess, first of all, like, what are you using this tool for? Like, what do you need it to do? Do you just want to look at the numbers, or do you want a tool that can help you schedule the content and plan it? Like, what are you trying to achieve?
Definitely scheduling, planning, but also having the possibility, like one of the most interesting features.
Oh no, we lost you.
Oh, Thomas, you've dropped off. Such a cliffhanger.
You said one of the most interesting features.
Yes, so one of the most interesting features for me would be to link different Facebook pages to each other. So kind of similar like video cross-posting does with Facebook.
Yeah.
But then like offer a piece of content that we create for the ISA to, let's say, all our members at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
But I couldn't find a software that does this. So it should be something that they basically have this post automatically in their inbox as a draft or as scheduled post that they can then free or something. So right now what I'm seeing is that basically all our members are struggling with creating their own content. We are creating quite some content with the ISA that could be, reshared, but then it has to be done manually. Nobody does it. So it basically just reaches a couple pages where they would actually be happy to have more content. So like something that can link these pages that we can access, maybe even Facebook groups. I don't know. Maybe that's an option as well.
Yeah, I think so. What's the name of your page? What's your page called?
So, well, the ones I'm managing is obviously the one from the ISA, Facebook page, ISA, and then there is Swiss Slackline.ch. It's called. There is Slack Attack. So these are like the local associations which are a member. So they're all members of the ISA. So right now I'm manually resharing all the content. It's just
yeah. So I guess like it's an interesting problem that you have, because essentially you're one person that's doing like all these different pages, and you want the same content to go on all of the different pages. Is that correct? Like, yes. Rather than resharing it. And I think probably where you're running into issues is that, I think from memory, like HootSuite, it's easy to post the same post on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but they maybe don't let you do it to 2 Facebooks. Is that the problem maybe?
Exactly, yeah.
It's it is very tricky, because like these sort of challenges, like I can tell you what bigger brands do. Like for instance, there's brands, if you look at Facebook these days, and you can try this out by yourself. If you type in Netflix, for instance, right, it'll go to a page depending on your IP address, like it'll go to that country. So if you are where are you based at the moment? In which country are you based at the moment?
Switzerland.
Yeah, so you're in Switzerland and you go onto Facebook and you type in Netflix, and then Netflix will default to the Swiss Netflix or whichever category they've wrapped you up in. And if I'm in Australia and I search Netflix, it'll show me the Australian Netflix. And there's a way to like work around it where you click on 3 dots and you can switch the country's region just on Facebook. But the reason that this is happening, and you might have noticed when you go on Facebook and search for brands, this is why it's happening, is because the bigger organizations have actually realized what a pain this is. And so they've done their Facebook pages as global pages. So they've set it up so like, I don't know, maybe in your case, like say you were doing the ISA all over again, and you wanted an ISA Germany, an ISA France, an ISA America. You can have that all ladder under a global page structure. And then they're all kind of connected by like the parent company. So this is something that Facebook has started doing, because then all the likes from like one page are connected to another page, and things like this that you're struggling with, like posting to multiple Facebook pages. I think if you have a global page structure, it starts to get easier. In the meantime, though, I don't know what the solution is for that exact problem that you have, like needing to post the same post to different pages. But I would look at that again, because, like you said, you've got different pages that have different audiences that are awake at different times, right? So do you actually want to just post the same post, or do you want to like do it more differently? Because maybe something in Switzerland, if you had a tool that posted it to the Australia page, you would still have to have a manual level where you'd have to say, okay, it has to go out in Australian time, not in Swiss time, right? Like there still is a little bit of adjusting. And if you wanted the best results, unfortunately, if you were thinking about like back to the audience and all this stuff, you wouldn't just share that post as it is to each page. You would customize it. So you would maybe say something specific for Australia that maybe you wouldn't say for Switzerland. Yeah.
So actually, with video cross-posting on Facebook, I'm thinking of something like this, where you can actually share a piece of content to all the pages, and they would then manually maybe just have to, change it, and then schedule it by themselves. But they basically already have access to it, and they don't have to manually like go onto the ISA page and share it, but it's already basically in their inbox and ready to share to everybody.
Well, interesting. Have you thought about like this is maybe like a simpler solution than trying to pay for technology, and it's something that we do. Like sometimes we go back to the basics. Like, have you thought about just simplifying and having even a Google Calendar where everyone has access to the calendar, everyone can just copy and paste the text and the image. Like sometimes it's those kind of solutions, like even on a big scale for the clients that I work on. Sometimes we find the easiest thing to do is to just create a shared doc with like, here's the asset, here's the copy, like everyone has access and everyone can post it. I know it's not like the sexiest solution, but sometimes simple works best.
Currently, we're working with just a Google Sheet, and we try to get people to put the content into the Google Sheet and basically put it under a specific date. It has like a date structure in it.
Yeah.
But the basic problem I see with all our social media accounts in Slacklining, like at least the ones from the non-profit organizations, not so much the ones from the commercial side, but from non-profit, it's just resources and time.
Yeah.
People don't want to spend this for just creating content and putting it onto their page. So we need some kind of tool to help like a larger community. I'm talking maybe 50 Facebook pages and 200 Facebook groups or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
To get the content out to all these volunteers that do this in their free time, and they're not going to be on the ISA page all the time or on other pages just sharing content all the time. It's not what they want to do.
Yeah, it's definitely a really interesting problem. I've never had to deal with that problem before, but it's if you add me on Facebook after this talk, there's a few really good Facebook groups. Like there's one called Facebook Ad Hacks. And if you posted this kind of a question, like there's some people that are getting super specific into the details that might have a good answer for that. Because yeah, like I'm sure there must be some solution. I've never encountered that level of a problem, because like this is I think you're in that tricky territory where you're not a big enough organization to be able to have like the tools that cost $30,000-$40,000, right? Like that's ridiculous for you guys.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like you have the same kind of volume that maybe a bigger brand would have. So normally that kind of problem, like if you onboard a tool like HootSuite or Sprinkler or whatever, easy, they'll solve it for you, but it's just going to cost a lot, and you don't have the resources for that. So you kind of have to find a hack. But if you connect with me after this, I'll add you to a few to one Facebook group in particular where if you post a question like this, there'll be someone in there that'll at least guide you in the right direction.
Nice, thanks a lot. Cool.
Yeah, but I do understand the frustration of that. Like even with our clients, sometimes some of these things like cross posting especially is really tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have several other questions, but I want to open to the group.
Well, I'm happy to answer the question. I just want to answer a question from Daniel first. He posted just before you. So hold the questions, I'll come back to it. But Daniel says, you keep repeating the word measure. Do you suggest keeping an annual log of growth or post categories to better understand your audience? Thank you, Daniel, for the question. Are you still on the call, Daniel?
Yeah, I just restarted it because of the connection, but yeah.
All good. So I think for this, like, I'll tell you how we do it in the film industry. We look at posts depending on genre. So if we've done a post for 50 Shades of Grey versus a post for How to Train Your Dragon, like those are two films from the same film company, but they're obviously very different audiences and it's very different goals. Like with 50 Shades of Grey, you're getting into the category where you're like trying to reach, like young women,
young children.
And How to Train Your Dragon. I mean, although, I don't know, maybe those two films could be related if you think about it. But cat got my joke. But yeah, no, but they're not related. So you have to like decide, like if a post did really well for 50 Shades of Grey, it won't do well for How to Train Your Dragon because it's a different audience. So the way that they do it, the way that they measure, or the way that we measure for them, is we split it up into genres for that business. So like comedy, action, horror, and we use benchmarks. So we look at the data and we look at quarter benchmarks. So we look at the engagements. Like I have to recalculate this for work now because we're in April, right? So Jan, Feb, March is like one quarter. April, May, June, like we do a rolling quarter average basically. And what that gives us is a sense that, okay, like this post got 100 comments. Is that good or is that bad? We compare it to the quarter benchmarks and specifically to that post's like category. So it's like, okay, compared to the horror category, it got 50 comments, but normally horror movies get 5 comments. So it did 10 times better, which is great. Or, you know, normally horror movies get 5,000 comments. So this post really sucked. It's important when you're measuring, the most important thing is measuring against yourself, like making sure that whatever metric you're choosing to measure on, it's all about consistency. So if you have to think about it like, okay, I want to improve my video views. Therefore, I'm going to measure my video views and I'm going to look at this as in the business world, you call it a KPI, your key performance index or key performance. Yes, KPI. KPI is like the thing that you're measured on. So the difference though with a small business is that you're not scoring your homework for someone else to rate you on. You are doing it yourself, right? You're like, oh, I want to improve. How do I do it? So figure out what it is that you want to improve on. And then I would start to look at historical data and create some of those like benchmarks that would be helpful.
Okay, I have another little question.
Okay.
Basically, I'm running social media of a performance company, and we're building our audience. And the kind of content we post is upcoming shows and like preparing for the shows and the shows themselves. But in this time, most of our projects have been cancelled. How can we like keep our public engaged, but like not keep reposting the same content from the last year? Like, you understand?
Yeah, it's actually it's the same problem for our clients. Like the movie cinemas are closed down right now. So we're going through the same thing because we can't post about the film that's going to be released because you're not being released, right? And so if you look at this in America, some of the movies are going straight to digital. So some of the posts they can do now about that, you know. But what's really resonating with audiences from what I'm seeing at the moment with COVID, and you have to figure out how your brand fits into this situation. But the posts that are doing really, really well on social media at the moment are things that are very relatable to the situation that is happening right now. And so, for instance, like you have, like think about the Olympics, right? Like all of that is canceled. All those shows are canceled. Everything is canceled. And I saw a post today where there was like an Olympic swimmer that filmed her home workout. This incredible video, like she's an Olympic swimmer and she's like lying on the kitchen counter and she's doing her like butterfly stroke. And that got so much traction because it's somebody that people are familiar with and she's doing something that they can relate to because everyone is in this together. And so I'm not familiar with what your show is, although I will check it out after this. But you know, what I would recommend is that if you have access to any of these actors or if you have access to re-editing content in a certain way, the stuff that you normally would have done, now is a time where you have to think really creatively and you have to think, how can I, like, it sucks, like everything's changed, nothing is normal, everyone's going through this, but how do I connect with my audience and give them something that they can look forward to or give them something they can engage with and still stay relevant to my brand?
Yeah, okay, thanks, I understand.
Yeah, but I'll check out the and I mean, like, guys, like all of you guys who stayed on after, it's like I'm really touched that you're that you have so many wonderful questions. So you can always connect with me on after this as well. Yeah. Yeah, also, sorry, Daniel, like if you're still there, yeah, I'm just like quickly looking on YouTube at your show. It looks really cool. Like, I think if you have some of these people like posting their home workouts or something like this, like I know everyone is doing it, but everyone is doing it because it's working. People love this content right now.
Yeah, okay. Well, we've
Yeah.
created like a video where each of us is posting playing a tune, and we're gonna put it in together as one video. That's like a hard content. That's not like something that's not I don't remember the third word. That's not a
This is
hero.
a
No, that's
hero.
not a hygiene. That's not a hygiene. That was a hero. It's
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
hygiene.
Don't get too. I'm glad that you guys are taking these turns, but also remember, like, don't get too caught up in this. Like, it's just a structure, right? Like, you can have. I think the most important thing is the first bit. Actually, it's like get your audience to do what by doing what. Like that is the most important thing. Like the why and the audience and understanding all like the intention and understanding what it is that you want to achieve. That's the important stuff. Like classifying the content as hero, hub, hygiene, like don't get lost in that. Like the most important thing is figure out why you're doing this, figure out what you want to achieve, and figure out who you want to reach. Those are the important things.
Okay, yeah. No, I just never heard the terms, like these terms. I never heard
Yeah, they're cool
it's
terms.
interesting, like it's just
Yeah.
a completely new world, and it's nice to see that there's real terms that are attributed to different styles of posts. And
Yeah, it is. I'm glad you find value in that. There's so many, like, oh my God, like my industry is they come up with terms for everything. So like sometimes it's better not to have the terms because like you get into this like space with bigger agencies where it's like everything becomes a buzzword and then you're just talking to each other in buzzwords and yeah. So, but it's cool. It's cool to like start to think about these things because if anything, it just gives you a little bit of it just gives you a little bit of structure so that you can be like, oh yeah, like this is what I'm doing and it makes sense.
yeah, well, I mean, like you said, that it's a good idea to start, like with a small business, to start experimenting with paid ads.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I think that before going for that, it would be about measuring, like
yes,
doing a big process on measuring and seeing
yeah,
which kind of contents work and which kind of content I would like to push in ads. And
yes.
so I'm thinking about how to start measuring and like yeah, which kind of categories the post would go into and which kind of audience.
Yeah, that's super, super, super important. And once you start to do this, like, you know, for us, and you'll have a bit more control over this as a small business. But once you start to think of it, you'll realize when you download all this data, it becomes incredibly like unless you're really good at Excel, it becomes incredibly time consuming if you don't have your posts classified a certain way. So one suggestion I'll give you now is like when you post things, maybe you have a hashtag because then it becomes easily searchable in an Excel document. So if you have a hashtag like for instance, if Kat was like, oh, I wonder how my like lockdown series did, and she only
Hashtag lockdown
hashtag
series.
lockdown, like honestly, like my clients are like, oh no, we don't want to have a hashtag because like it looks ugly on Facebook. But then we've got the resources to have a tool that's able to sift through and like, you know, select it and all that stuff. But if you don't have the resources to that and you're doing this off an Excel spreadsheet, just make your life easier, have a hashtag, and then you can very easily like find that hashtag and just sort those posts like that, right? Like that's one way to do it. Hashtags are incredible for categorizing stuff because it's like you can search for that and it shows up exactly like that, right? So that's one little like hack around it. So maybe, but it doesn't have to, like, again, it totally depends on your business. Like you are your own boss, right? So it doesn't have to, don't get so stressed that you're like, oh my God, everything now needs to be categorized. Like it's fine even if you were to download all your Facebook data and all you were to do is look at the average number of comments your posts get. That's a good place to start. And then you can sort your posts by the top comments and you can look at it and go like, oh, like what posts got the most comments? Why did they get the most comments? What was it about it? Like it's measurement, but then it's also about finding the insight, right? Because you look at this stuff and you're like, and this is what I do at work on a like daily, weekly basis. It's like I look at the stuff that did really well and I have to find why. Again, it's all about coming back to the why. It's like, okay, well, this worked, but why? That's the hard part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Kat, if I ask another question.
Take it
go
away,
for it.
Thomas.
Go for
Take
it.
the floor.
Okay.
This was secretly for this purpose. Now we finally have our hands on you, Malavika.
I only have 2 more questions. So
Okay.
one question would be, you have to imagine we are now almost 50 officials within the ISA. All of them are doing voluntary work. Nobody's being paid whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have all these members, another, almost 60, 70 clubs. They all have voluntary boards. So nobody's being paid there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And now, from my experience, knowing how important like communication, especially in our case, social media and the website is, I learned that the first thing we're going to go and spend money on is actually this. It's actually our website and social media. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, knowing this already, and with Swiss Slackline, our national federation, we are actually paying someone to do social media already.
Yeah.
But this is like our first like kind of external contract we made with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So, where would you have this person like focus on? Because like, right now I'm just giving out this contract. Please do our social media. Of course, there's this general question why. I think that's pretty much answered.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, knowing this, that we have very few resources available, and we're already spending it or thinking of spending it on social media in the future, like where we put the focus on with just giving out these contracts to individuals or small groups that will do social media for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm definitely going to, I think you'll really benefit from this group, because before you like hire anyone, just check out this group, because you might be able to get better deals on there. Just I'll add you to that, or I'll like get Kat to add you to that group after this. But I think it sounds like, Thomas, it sounds like you're having, it sounds like you think you're having a social media problem, but what you're having is a business, not a problem, but what the problem is like the business, right? Like your business is growing, you want to reach more people, you have limited resources, and you found that social media is an incredibly effective way to do that. And now you've got like a little bit of money that you want to spend, you want to invest in this person to help grow your business and keep up with the demand and all the goals, which is awesome. But I think the question should be, what are you looking to achieve, and like what's the most important task? Because you can hire someone, you can say, please do our social media, but social media is so broad. Like, do you want them, and they only have a limited number of, I imagine, only a limited number of hours in the day, and even with volunteers, like you need to write them a brief. Like that's the first step, is as you in this case are the client and you're giving someone else the work, right? And so you have to tell them what you want to achieve as the client. And so, for example, you look at your social media and you're like, is it more important to post? Is it more important that they spend their time posting pictures? Or is it more important that they spend their time responding to messages? I don't know how many messages you guys get. I don't know what the volume is like, but I think the best way that you can make good use of the money is to be clear on what it is that you expect. Because also on their end, if they say, oh, we're going to only spend, I don't know, 3 hours a day doing this, but the task expands to beyond 3 hours and then they charge you for 6 hours, you might say, wait, hang on, like why are you spending so much time? But it's because you weren't clear in the task. So even to the point of saying, you can be as prescriptive as you want, but even to the point of saying like I want like 5 posts a week, or like 7 posts a week, 1 post every day, 1 post on Facebook, 1 post on Instagram, 1 Instagram story. Like, it's about figuring out what that looks like. Because to just say doing social media, it's so broad. Like, do you want them responding to every person that comments on the post? Do you want them to to like respond to messages? Do you like, what is it within social media that you think they'd be using their time the best for? And that, all of that, to answer that question, like, if you don't know what the answer is, the question then to ask yourself is, what will give me the best possible outcome? And that goes back to your why. You're like, okay, if I want to create a really engaged community, then maybe instead of posting a post every single day, I post a post every other day, but I make sure that I respond to every single person that comments in a really meaningful way. You know, I think those are sort of some of the questions that, as a business, and you have the power to do this. No one is, just because other brands are doing it a certain way, or you've been doing something a certain way, you decide the rules, and you decide what's important, and you decide what to measure. So maybe for you, connecting on social media means like everyone who comments gets a response and we engage them in a conversation. Or maybe it's about like every day someone logs in and they see something beautiful from us. You have to figure out, you've got a limited amount of resource, so you need to figure out how you'd like to use that resource and what the best outcome will be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks a lot for that answer. Perfect.
What was the second question?
So right now, from the start, from the ISA, and we've been active on Facebook, and since about 2 years we started with Instagram. Now with Cut, this has been really picked up with the lockdown series. Before we were not so active, just because we couldn't find anyone to do it, or we couldn't find the time. And several times so far it has come up that actually, as an international federation or even a national body, you should really be on Twitter. Reason why we haven't done this is because we have very few people that are active on Twitter. We don't have the knowledge, we don't have the resources right now. My question is this something you would recommend for an organization that we are? And if yes, are there maybe even other channel? I mean, obviously with some sort of management program, we could manage everything a bit together and simplify the process of getting information out. But is it really a must for us to go on Twitter? Or is there maybe even another social media platform we're completely missing out?
Thomas.
TikTok.
It's got to be TikTok at this point.
Okay, I'll give you. This is actually a really good question, because my clients, we post for them. So for pictures, right, for movies, we post on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And every single week in this report, I ask them the question, why are you posting on Twitter? Like, what are you trying to do? Because in Australia, nobody's interacting with the content. And so what I have suggested to my clients is, you're posting original content. And again, it comes back to the limited time and resource, right? You've only got so many hours in the day. So do you want us to create all this original content for Twitter where no one is seeing it, no one's interacting with it? Or would you rather have us spend that time creating content for Instagram stories, which is like super high right now, like, and TikTok and all these platforms where the engagement is high? However, I think to your point, if you are an international organization, here's the benefit of Twitter. And I will be super honest, as a person, I hate Twitter. I really don't like use it as a person. I don't like this platform. The only time I use Twitter is I've got one friend on there and I speak to him on Twitter. So every like once in a year I log on to like check my messages. But having said that, the benefit of Twitter, besides, like, I don't know, maybe Donald Trump might retweet you someday, but I don't know if that's a good thing, is news organizations and people that are verified, like news reporters, are very much still on Twitter for some reason. And so if you do an event, right, and say you're launching something or whatever, you're gonna get press coverage. If you get press coverage, I don't know if this is a thing or not for you guys yet. If you get that kind of coverage and you have a Twitter handle, then this, like, say, you know, the New York Times or someone amazing wants to talk about what you're doing, the first place those journalists will go is Twitter. So I guess that's the question, is like, do you feel like that's important right now to where you guys are at? Do you feel like a lot of journalists and magazines and newspapers are going to be talking about you and wanting to tag you? And if that is true, like if you feel like, oh yeah, like shit, we should be on Twitter, then the way that I would think about it is just start, like, if you have to, because it's a lot of work. Like every time you start a new social media platform, it is a lot of work, right? And if you've got limited resources and you're already overwhelmed, then is that a good use of time? I don't know. That's a business question. But if you do have to, for some reason, start it, I would just start one. And then you don't feel stressed about, oh my God, now I need to post like all this content on Twitter. Then just use it as a platform to keep it super simple and talk to the journalists and reshare like articles or just do text. Like, not every platform needs to be super complex. Like, not every platform needs original content and super in-depth things. So if you do end up starting a Twitter, keep it super simple. Just retweet stuff. Just have one account. Like, you know. But my recommendation would be, if you don't need it, you don't need it. But if you want the, you know, journalists and magazines and all these people that are on the platform, that would be the only maybe good reason to get it.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that answer.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're not at the point yet where we have too many media contacts. We have some, they write us an email usually, and it's always short notice. They want confirmations on certain topics or records or stuff like that. So I'm guessing these then come through Twitter and not through email. So there are some media contacts, definitely. I just know that within the Slackline community, Twitter is not a big thing. So the reason to use Twitter would be, as you said, to an external audience, which is media, which is maybe other international federations, stuff like that. So it's a completely different audience.
Totally.
Maybe even to get onto the political dimension, but definitely not the Slackliners, I think.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, Thomas, if someone wants to find you, like people have the means to find you. Like if someone really wanted to get in touch, it's not like they can't go on your Instagram and message you there. Like, I think the world is, there are no like you have to do this or you have to do that, because if someone in the media industry is like, oh my God, I want to get in touch with this person, they'll find a way. You know, you have those, just as long as you're contactable on Facebook or on Instagram, then you're not missing out on much. And especially if you've got a lot of work and everything's volunteer based and stuff, like I wouldn't bother getting involved in another platform unless it's really, really going to make a difference.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Let me just see. Do we have any more questions? Kat says, episode reminders. Don't pity us. I don't pity you guys. You guys are awesome. Yeah, I hope that this was helpful. Like I said, it's been it's definitely was a cool challenge for me, because I think a lot of the times I'm thinking about, the like big clients, and they have very different problems to small businesses. But I think it's it's always really cool to speak to small business owners, because like that sort of stuff is so much more genuine, and I love speaking to like real people with real business challenges. So yeah, it's been really fun to like think about that. And I'm sorry I don't have all the answers, because again, like with social media, things are always changing, and there's always like that the group problem that you had and the cross-posting problem, it's so unique to your business that sometimes you kind of have to like ask around the community and see who's run into the problem and like figure it out. Like that's kind of what makes social media fun as well. But But yeah, I hope that some of these things come in handy. And it's, again, like everything that I've said, it's basics, and it's like one way to do things, but it's not the only way to do things. It's just, if you start to go down the rabbit hole of like how to do things and what is like the way people are doing it, there's so many different ways of slicing and dicing information. You just really have to figure out what works for your business and what works for you. And these are just tools in the toolkit, but it's all about building your own toolkit and then getting to those results that start with the why. So, yeah.
It's been really cool. Thank you.
No, thank you guys.
Yeah, cool. I guess that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Ta-da! And oh, Eva, say hi if you're still here.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, Ava, you stayed.